In today's episode, I speak to Master Encourager Michael Arterberry. We discuss how to ensure that past experiences do not leave you better and how you can leave a legacy. During the conversation, we also discuss the nature of leadership and how the context changes, not the teenager. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Michael Otterberry. Hi, Michael.
Yes, how you doing, Judith? I'm very excited to be here today to get to speak to you and your audience.
Thank you. Yes, I'm doing well, thank you. I think before we begin, it'd be great to hear a little bit about you.
Okay, so I would like to begin by telling a story that illustrates my life that will sort of unveil some of the things that I've gone through and put me in a position that I'm in now. And it's about a farmer and a donkey. And his donkey is one of his favorite farm animals because once he finishes working with the donkey on the farm, he brings the donkey back home and he allows the donkey to play with his kids. So the donkey is more like a farm animal, but, slash pet at the same time. And so when he comes down the driveway with the donkey, the kids come running out the house and they play with him and they wash him and they ride him. And so this is a normal ritual. So one day he brings the donkey home, they come out, they play with him, they ride him, they wash him. He releases him back out into the farm. And then during the evening, while he's out wandering in the farm, he falls into an empty water well. And when he falls into the empty water well, of course, he can't get out. So the next morning, the farmer whistles for him. He's not coming. So he starts walking around the farm and he finds him at the bottom of the well. The farmer wants to get him out. So he goes and gets 6 of his friends. They come over to the well. They look into the well. They decide they're going to pull him out with some rope. So all 6 of them go get some rope and they start to lasso the donkey. They throw the rope. They miss. They throw the rope, they miss. They throw it, and they finally throw it by his hind legs. He steps into the rope. They shimmy it up his body, and they start to pull. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. Then halfway up the well, Judith, they realize that the donkey's too heavy. When they realize he's too heavy, they lower him back to the bottom of the well, and now they have to make a grim decision. At least the farmer does. He can't feed the donkey food at the bottom of the well because it wouldn't make sense. He doesn't want to starve the donkey because starving the donkey would be, that's more like his pet. He couldn't do that. One of his hot-headed friends was like, hey, just shoot him. He's like, nah, I can't do that. So one of his more reasonable friends whispered in his ear and said, listen, you don't want your kids to fall into the well. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover him with dirt. We're going to sacrifice your donkey, but your kids will be safe. So the farmer decided that he can deal with that. So they all get shovels and they start shoveling dirt. And every time they shovel the dirt, it hit the donkey, he would scream. And it would cause the farmer some distress. So you got dirt, scream, dirt, scream, dirt, scream. Then the next thing you know, the scream stopped. When the scream stopped, they gave the donkey a moment of silence, but then they went back to work. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, you see the donkey's right ear. More dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, you see half his body. More dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, that donkey walks right out of the well that he fell into. Now, Judith, the way that he saved himself was every time that dirt came across the wall, it would fall on his back. He would step on it. He would shake it off. He would step on it. and he used every scoop of dirt that was meant to kill him to save his life. Now, I tell you that story because I want to share with your audience some of my dirt before we get into some questions. I grew up in a home with a raging alcoholic father. He raged from the time I was born until the time he died when I was 16. What that did for me was any time that I was able to play and do what I had to do growing up, sometime during that day, something would tap me on my shoulder and remind me of what I had to go home to, at the end of the evening. On top of growing up with a raging alcoholic father, I grew up in poverty. Both my parents worked full time. If both salaries were coming into my house, we would have been fine. My father used his money to drink. My mother was a housekeeper. She cleaned homes for a living, and she raised 4 kids with a housekeeping salary. Last but not least, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. You got an alcoholic father. I had older siblings, but the best that they can raise me was best that they were getting from our dad. Now, my neighbors, unfortunately, had dysfunctional families as well. So my community had crime, it had drugs, people going to prison. But the silver lining of my story, and we can get to your questions, is the fact that that is the catalyst and the foundation of why I do what I do, and I look to encourage other people.
Thank you for sharing that. It's motivational. So you say it's why you do what you do. Tell us what you do.
Well, I call myself the Master Encourager. So I feel as if, I don't feel as if, I do. I encourage people. Just like you said, the story in itself was encouraging, but being able to come through something like that with scars and wounds, it leaves you in a place where the residue of it pushes you to want other people to find balance in their lives. So part of my job is I speak at engagements from a podium. I've created a nonprofit program for youth that I bring into high schools. And my firm belief with adults and with the youth is the fact that we go through life, we step on landmines. They don't blow us up, but they cause damage. And what we start to do is we start to make decisions in our lives based on the damage rather than what's going on in real time. And so if you don't evaluate, self-reflect, you'll find yourself creating a life that's not consistent with what you're living. And so what I do is I present messages to people, and I help them take the jumble that's going on in their mind and make sense of it.
Well, that's really needed, especially now. Do you see yourself really busy with this COVID-19?
Yeah. I was busy beforehand because, believe it or not, with all the other things going on in society, my program breaks down barriers within diverse groups. So I was being called into high schools where they had issues with diversity. And so I was doing some of the legwork already in the trenches before the whole incident with Black Lives Matter. But, with COVID, what happened is I went to a conference right before in LA about branding your business. And he talked about you had to be global. And so what I did is I came home, and this is how I found you, is I found podcasts that I felt had platforms that were similar to what I like to talk about and what I would like to present to different audiences, even some that didn't match perfectly, but I still felt that the message was appropriate. And I'll tell you, Judith, since COVID, I've been on over 75 podcasts.
Wow.
And 75, and I'm talking about from a dog walker to a woman that works with blended families to music teachers. I mean, I've been on so many different platforms because, like you say, or like you said, it's a time where encouragement, getting focused, getting a fresh perspective on life is what everybody needs.
Yes, it's a universal message, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So would you say that what you do in a respect is to help people not be bitter with what life brings, and then use whatever they have gained from those life experiences for the better?
Yeah, definitely. I use an analogy of the fact that I want you to envision yourself on like we could say a sailboat, and you're on the ocean, and the sailboat starts to dismantle. You know, you hit some rocks and it starts to come apart. And by the time you get to the shore, you have pieces left rather than an entire boat. And I use that analogy because what we need to do in life is we have to live off of the broken pieces that we have left when storms and challenges come, because that's, you know, what I feel is a pruning, you know. So when the storm comes and it kind of shakes your life, it's shaking off all that unwanted weight, and what you have left is really only what you were supposed to have.
That's interesting. I know one of the talks that you give is about how to be remembered,
right?
Or how you want to be remembered. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You want me to walk that out for you?
Yeah, I was wondering what do you propose people do? Do they sit there and think, I don't know, what is my legacy? What's legacy I want, and then work backwards?
No, what I do is I share with them that we have to live a conscious life. Mm-hmm. And by living a conscious life, what I mean is you have to look at every interaction that you have with a person to have a purpose. And your purpose should be that once you finish with that with that interaction with that person, and you walk away, that person should say, wow, what just hit me? And what I mean by that is not some fantasy world, but you should be in a position that when you interact with people, rather than always taking, be in a perspective of leaving something with somebody. So, you know, living conscious is making sure that your conversation has substance, that you're not just talking about anything, and that your life in itself has weight and has a footprint, so that people will feel that once you've finished in your interaction. So how you want to remember, I'll give you a quick example. You know, I grew up, I'm a big guy, you know what I'm saying? And I say that to you because I was big all my life. And so as a kindergartner, you know, I'm bringing you back now, but as a kindergartner being big, I had a choice, Judith, to either be the bully or be the one that protects those being bullied. So at a young age, I chose to be the protector, and I did it with like authority, and like I took really pride in it. Now I tell you that because I did it straight through my elementary school, my secondary school, and high school. And when I went to my 25-year high school reunion, my class president pulled me to the side, and she says, you know, I just want you to know that people are here tonight simply because they knew you were coming. Now, you would think that was enough. Now, this same class president follows me on Facebook. And now on Facebook, I have my quiet time in the morning, and after my quiet time, my spiritual time, I put a post on my page, and it's to inspire people. Remember, I'm the Master Encourager. But anyway, so she follows me on Facebook. She reads these posts. She remembers how I treated her when we were growing up as classmates. She invites me to a school where she's an executive at a charter school. And, you know, we introduce ourselves at the table, and I'm humble. So when I went, I did a quick, you know, overview of who I was. And she asked, I'm talking about, it was a professional meeting, all these people at the desk, at the table. She asked, could she please enhance or add to mine? And when she went to speak about me, Judith, she started to cry.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, like watching it, at first it was very uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? But then as my spirit started to speak to me, I realized when you ask me the question of how you want to be remembered, the fact that woman, when she pulled from information of how I made her remember who I was as a person, it brought tears to her eyes.
Yeah, I can totally get that. It made me think about socialised mavericks. Mavericks being willfully independent people. Socialised mavericks work for the greater good. And it makes me think about how socialised mavericks are, because they very much don't want to harm somebody, and they are good, active listeners. So when you're talking to a socialised maverick, they're 100% focused on that interaction and are careful with their language choices most of the time. But what do you do when the interaction you're going to have with somebody is going to impart some sort of negativity because of the interaction that you're having? Like, I don't know, you have to let them go from their job, or you have to tell them some bad news.
I believe in, I took a course, it's called AVP, Alternatives to Violence Project. And I used to go into a maximum security prison. It was an anti-violence program. And they taught a perspective called transforming power. Mm-hmm. And what the transforming power was is how you can take a toxic situation and spin it and twist it so that each person could walk away from the negative interaction feeling as if they won. And so what you do is you set up what you're talking about so that it doesn't come off as you reprimanding or saying something that's going to hurt their feelings. You set it up and you deliver it where they almost, by the end of the conversation, feel as if you've done them a favor.
How do you avoid that being manipulative?
How do you avoid it? That's depends on the individual. Now, if you throw a percentage on it, do I win every time? No, but you get people who are more difficult, but I feel as if you can find a silver lining in any situation, and not a faulty silver lining. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about employment and people are losing jobs. With COVID, I'm a firm believer that, some people will lose permanent jobs forever. But I feel like some of us end up doing jobs because we get bullied out of the job we really wanted to do. Like you wanted to be something and people told you that, it didn't make enough money. That's not really the qualities that you have. And you end up just doing things to have paychecks. So with COVID, I'm saying once you lose your job, when you go back to something that you enjoy. So when I present a situation or something to someone, I look at that perspective first. So sometimes I may deliver the good news first, the fresh perspective, before I even get to the negative piece. You know what I'm saying? So, that's how I guess I try to limit the damage. Okay,
because that made me think of one of the experiences I had where I was head of HR in an organisation that was exiting a certain business. So all the staff, most of the staff were transferring to another company that was taken over, but all the administrative tasks and the staff associated with those would be losing their jobs. And I was responsible for the HR team who had never done anything like this before, and it's difficult. They'd be, leaving their friend and they were uncertain what's going on. And my view to them was, this is going to be really difficult. But there's two things that need to happen. One, your pain can't be transferred to the other employees, but also you can look at it as this experience is something that you will learn from and gain from that most people in your profession don't ever go through. So there are things that can be gained and developed in this. And that really helped them when they saw the context of what they were doing and how, and also that they could use their energy to make the transfer better and easier for their friends and the other employees that they would be leaving behind. So the department wasn't one that would traditionally be quite a depressive, full of sickness, anger-laden department, but there were people who were full of vitality, wanting to do the best for everybody.
Right. Sounds like you took a page out of my book.
I think there's often in these leadership arenas, people become afraid of what they think a reaction is going to be. So they plan for a negative and a fearful reaction, so that when they have to deliver news or to put this thing through, then they're just like blurting out what needs to happen because they're defensive, because they think they're going to be attacked. But then that leads to an interaction that's quite negative, because the other person's picking up on this defensive mode and they're thinking, why are they defending? Should I now be on attack? And then you get this horrible dynamic.
Yeah, but can I say something, Judith? You know, when you talk about leadership, and, you know, I was just on a podcast that was part of the goal, talking about leaders. If you are a great, let me stay with great. If you're a great leader and you've been consistent in your leadership, as bad as termination is, a great leader should be able to step into that role because they've been able to continue that. It's just another portion of your leadership. You know what I'm saying? So if I've been a leader and I've been good at it, as bad as being terminated is, we should have such a relationship where I don't have to do that mental ping pong before I sit down with you, because we've established a meaningful relationship with boundaries so that I'm able to bring real to you, because that's part of life.
Yeah, it's definitely about the context of you as an individual. If you have a reputation to be fair and honest, so I had a reputation of not lying, which obviously helps in the role of HR. So even if there are, uncertain times, people knew that, as far as I was aware, what I was saying was right. And I've been in situations before. I remember somebody having to be sacked for theft in an organisation I'd worked at. And at the end of it, he shook my hand and he said, "You were fair, you were open, you treated me well. Thank you very much."
There you go. Yeah.
And I think it's that kind of bit like what you said before, how you want to be remembered. I don't want to be remembered as someone you can't trust.
Yes.
So I don't live my life in that way. So I want to be, if I tell you something, you can rely on it.
Yeah.
And if I'm not sure, I say I'm not sure, or if I've told you something and then I later find out I'm wrong, I will come and tell you. Will know because I've told you before you found out.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's good leadership. I like that. I like that. Very good.
Yeah, it's leadership is one of those weird things, isn't it? Where it's incredibly simple, but also incredibly complex. And it's kind of, I've been thinking a lot. I'm writing my second book on leadership at the moment, and I'm looking at like Maverick leadership as a philosophy. You have a philosophy of things, and I think that makes it easier when you see leadership as a philosophy, because it's easier to live your life to a certain standard than it is to try to remember some sort of theory.
Well, yes. And not only a standard, I think transparency to a limit is always a great tactic in leadership. And not only that, the show that I was on, we talked about how some leaders lead by fear, so they want their employees to be afraid of them, or you want to be able to build a relationship where, like you said, with the gentleman that shaked your hand, there's some trust. Because I'm a coach as well. So I lead in my business, but I also coach football with high school students. And I'm able to do things with my players that other coaches are not able to do, because I build a relationship that's purposeful. You get guys that just come out and they think it's all about coaching a sport, but everything is tactical. It's your approach. And what I do is I make sure that any person that I deal with on an individual level understands that I'm invested in them, and it's not just because our interaction is forced, but it's because it's part of who I am as a person. It's
because you care, right?
Yeah.
And I think because when I do leadership training, it's one of the things I generally say is that as a leader, you have to honestly care about the people that you lead.
Yes.
You can't do leadership and not care.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 And my poor leaders that I've had didn't care, or they tried to lead by fear. And see, what people don't understand. Now you got to think about it. I'm an alpha male. And if you try to lead me by fear, it's iron on iron.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? So, you come in and you try to scare me. You're not going to force me to do my job any better because you're trying to scare me. And so a lot of jobs like that, believe it or not, that was part of the motivation to have my own business, because I realized what my personality was. And it was hard, not because I was stubborn, but it's hard to work for someone who doesn't take the time to realize what you and I are saying, that, there's a relationship that needs to be built before you can ask me to do certain things. You know what I'm saying? And a form of respect. Well, I don't like to say that because I hate when a teenager says to an adult that, you better respect me, or no, that's a different dynamic. So when I say that, I don't want the teenagers to catch that and be walking around thinking that an adult needs to respect them. No, but in certain situations, I think that respect level needs to be established.
Well, respect is one of those funny words. I think everybody deserves a level of respect because they're a human being. And there's also, so that's just mandatory. You respect someone because they're human, but then there's a respect of what an individual stands for and what they do, and that is something that is earned. But but there is that basic level of course, I respect you as a human being. I'm not going to walk past you in the street and throw something at you because you're poorer than me, or I don't know, different colour than me, or something stupid, because that's not respect. It's wrong, it's not something you do. But it's like the word integrity. There are multiple meanings for these words. But yes, I think respect is earned, but there's also respect that's there anyway.
Yes.
I certainly learned over the years by watching managers of all the things that I would never do when I became one. So they were really great teachers, and you saw such things. And I think, for me, it changed the dynamic between being upset and annoyed with the manager because they were so awful at managing, and going, actually, this is really great learning. So when I one day become a manager, I won't do these things. So it almost became for me like they were a study. Like my animals that I was studying over time, and go, when you do that doesn't work. Why are we doing that, mate?
Yeah. No, I agree. Living a conscious life. See, look at that. All my stuff is coming right back at you.
Yeah, I definitely talk about living life on purpose, which sounds the same as what you're saying. One of the things that I talk about is that every single person is a role model for change. So, there are many roles that I play, whether it's, a partner, family member, a leader, a writer, whatever, an individual, a black person, or whatever you want to call it. And whether I want to or not, people observe what I do, and they'll either emulate it or not. Right. So if people are going to do that anyway, then you might as well do it on purpose, isn't it? And be a role model for change.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So what's it like spending so much time with teens? So would that be Generation Z then?
What it's like is I get a fresh perspective on what the world looks like. You know what I'm saying? And I say that because they are our future. And what I've watched is, because I've been doing it so long, is I've watched teachers who have been outdated and need to make the choice to either stay in the profession or learn different tactics, because the teenager has changed, but their approach hasn't changed. Now, you asked me about the teenagers. I brought the teacher in only because, like I'm saying, there's an evolution going on with teenagers these days. And if you got to listen. Their language is different. There's a lot more freedom that they have as a teenager today. The world, I'm 52, so the world is a lot different now than it was when I was a teenager. So what I do is, I'm very, very much into staying up to date with the fashions and the trends. One, because I want to be looked at as being cool, and two, because I want to be relevant. You know what I'm saying? And, the one thing that will always resonate with teenagers is if you think back to when you were a teenager, you can eliminate, strip down all the trends and everything else, but that feel of a teenager is just universal. And so whenever I really want to impact them and hit them, what I call where they live, is I just remember what it was to be 14 and 15 years old.
I think that's quite an interesting dynamic that you mentioned, actually, is that teenagers are the same as they've always been, searching for new and everything, but the context, the environment that they're in are substantially different. So they are behaving to that context.
Yep.
I have never thought of it that way before.
Yeah. Look at
it's
that.
Not it's not the teenager that's different over the years. It's the context.
Yes.
And how they interact with the context.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And that keeps it where you can be able to digest it. Whereas you get these people that say, "Oh, I don't understand them." No, you don't understand them because you don't understand their world.
Thanks for that. I've got to say that was quite useful.
Yeah, okay, that's good. We were able to walk away with hopefully many nuggets, but that's a definite nugget.
You know what? As a maverick, I'm pathologically curious, so I love learning new stuff. And you've just allowed me to see something in a way that I had not considered. So when the call is finished, I will go away and ponder more on that subject, because that's how I work. I'm like, I'll just take the notes. I've just written it down, so I will be going away and thinking about that. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's quite useful. Because you said that that as a mentor, like mentors have helped you as you've grown up. What do you think the modern day mentor needs to be now?
Well, I said it before, was the consciousness, and I say that because teenagers speak, but if you're not listening, you don't hear them. You see what I'm saying? So, it's even with my kids. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and whenever I'm on a podcast on parenting, they ask, what's the best advice for raising a teenager? And my best advice with raising a teenager is staying in step with them. So you rather than being reactive, I'm proactive. So I know my daughter's habits, when she does certain things, how she moves, how she maneuvers. So as soon as I see that something is not consistent, rather than waiting for it to become this catastrophe, I approach it. She's allowed to go in a room and close her door, but if I see that the door is closed too often, I knock on it and she gets the question. Listen, you dealing with something in here? It's what's going on, and if there's something, she may tip a hat. But if not, so I think just listening, and when they listen, giving them a platform. So people are so quick to discredit them. My groups that I do in schools, the forum that I create is a non-judgment forum. So, I believe that teenagers should have a voice, and so you can't be so quick to take away validation of something that they stand on, even if you don't agree. So a lot of times, if I don't agree, I'll never try to shoot down their thought process. I let them own it. They can have it because that's their right.
Yeah. what made me think when you were saying that is that we are forcing everybody, not just the young, but we're forcing everybody to grow up at a faster pace beyond that mental resilience and that mental capabilities. It's typical all around the world with different things, though, whether it's access to a tablet and therefore to adult content at age 5, or it's the school system teaching something, even if it's something like grammar that you would used to teach at age 13 and you're teaching at age 7. Because when you think about it, we seem to be, so I'm just sort of thinking out loud, but we seem to be as a society trying to make everybody grow up a lot faster than we ever had, and then we wonder why there's more self-harming, more depression, more suicide, and it's because we just can't really cope with it, but we think we can cope with it, but we're not coping with it, are we? I mean, it's even like the workplace. I was reading something and it was saying that if you're 40 in the workplace, you're considered too old. I'm like, 40? So you're really much basically saying this is the top end of a millennial. So, that's probably like around the oldest millennial. So if you're old, if you're Generation X or maybe Boomer, that's it. You're no longer useful in the workplace, which is mad.
Yeah, it is. Because I just told you how old I was, so it's extremely mad.
It's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it, you think actually, if you're not a millennial, then as far as and you can understand. And the way I look at it is that if you think that millennials are becoming, are leaders now, and they are taught leadership in a very different way to the Generation X and the Boomers. And if you're not sure of yourself, and so there's a lot of insecurity in that age group, then having someone who's older than you can be seen as threatening. If you don't know how to cope with it, because a lot of traditional training has stopped for many years, then it's frightening to have somebody who is 40, 50, 60.
Yeah. It's a foreign language.
Yeah, which is quite interesting, because I remember my first Saturday job, I was 15 at working in a supermarket, and I ended up managing 60-year-old women, and at the time I didn't sort of think, oh, they're older than me. It was just like, this is cool, I get paid more money now, I get more overtime. It wasn't something, I'm a Generation Xer though, so it just seemed, well, why wouldn't it be? I'm able to do it, I've got the job, I'm doing it, whereas I think if you gave it to a Generation Z or even they would struggle more at that massive age gap, because it's not something they're used to seeing, because as a population they're so huge.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. No, it makes. I agree.
So I think I'm just thinking out loud as we talk. So leadership is becoming harder for makes me look like I'm old. I'm really not old, but for those two populations, because if you think about it, they've not had the training or the life experiences the other people have had. Yeah. So it becomes, so like I went to probably the same as you. You had a Saturday job, a responsible job at 15 or 16 or something, and you've always done some work. Whereas if now, I don't know in the US, but certainly in the UK, all this, everything's about education and getting a degree. So the kids that would have been at 15, they're studying, so they don't have time to work. So right. they don't get the life experiences.
Yeah.
So by the time they get into a job, they're much older, and then they have the expectation that they're acting for their age, but without any experience. Because we all make mistakes, and when you're 15 and you make a mistake, people go, you're 15. But if you're 21 and you make the same mistake because you have the same lack of experience, all of a sudden you are much older and you should have known better.
Yeah, no, it creates a problem.
Yeah, so you can see the insecurity, which is why they need someone like you as a Master Encourager.
Because I am a chameleon.
Tell me about
You
that.
see, I'm able. See, when I say I make myself relevant, for you to be able to be a leader on many scales, is I have to be able to relate to each different generation, so that when I speak their language, but then I also understand the language in return. So that's why my program is 2 full days in a high school. So when I tell another adult that, they look at me like, how do you survive for 2 full days? Yeah, 2 full
They're
days.
just humans,
Yeah,
and they're not
that's it.
parents.
Yeah. No, they are. And so if you speak their language, we kick
That's
it.
funny.
Yeah, that. And what I love is, when they're in there and they come in at 8:30. And I love to have a teenager peek up at the clock. It's like 2:00, and they look at me and they're like, "Where did the time go?" Not, "Oh, when are we leaving?" But like, it's 2:00. We started at 8:30, and we got so deep into this that I lost track of time. So,
I think the difference is, especially now, teenagers are encouraged to speak up because, they're raised that way. Speak up, say your mind. If you don't think it's right, speak, and if that threatens you, then teenagers are really difficult to deal with. If you welcome people challenging you because in the challenge there's learning, whether it's for you or for them, so you're actually encouraging it, then it's fun.
yeah.
Because you're not afraid, because you're there as two human beings trying to get someplace. This is fantastic. Thanks for this, Michael. I think it's a great place to stop. But before I do that, is there anything that you are dying to tell me and are like, I don't want to stop there because I didn't say this? Because if there is something, you can say it now.
Just one thing. I have a book, and it's called Be Encouraged. And it's a book. They can go to shakethedirtexperience.com. And if they go there, they can get a free copy of it. Okay. And my book is centered around my message. I told the beginning of the story about the donkey, and my book gives people, it's a 1-page devotional style book, but it gives you a nice, proper perspective on a day, regardless of what you may run into or what may be on your plate. So I think that they should pick that up for some encouragement.
Cool. That's excellent. Thank you for that, Michael.
Yes.
Would you come back on another podcast?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to, Judith. I had a great time. Please invite me back.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Michael as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.